Sam, we have Justin from Amsterdam. So I guess there's people still entering the room, so we'll just give everybody a minute to enter the room and sit comfortably for the next 45-50 minutes for the Gaming in Holland sessions at the SBC Digital. Still people coming in. Forgot to take coffee here, but I guess it has to wait. And again, yeah, some more people getting in. Well, let's give it one more minute. Then we know everybody's there and everybody will follow completely from beginning to end. Welcome new viewers. Welcome new viewers. We have 57, so it doubled in the last minute. So good. Popular time to be online. How's life, Peter-Paul? Long time no see.
Yeah, very good. You know, nothing to complain. Very busy. A lot happening in the Netherlands, which we'll be touching upon later. But yeah, all good. How about you?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Preparing for the next weeks of conferences and stuff. Hello, Eric. Welcome to the webinar. I can't see Sam now, the speaker, Erin. Is that me or is that?
Oh, that's because I wasn't speaking.
Okay, because you.
Yeah. If I start speaking, then.
Great. So it is now 3 minutes past the hour. I think we have. Most people should be in the room right now. Welcome to the Gaming in Holland session, preparing for the Dutch Remote Gaming Act, timeline, regulations, and market outlook here at the SBC Digital Summit. We are super grateful to SBC Events for having us. I am, by the way, logging in from Barcelona, where the city where the SBC Summit originally would have taken place and will take place. Hopefully, we can see you all next year here and have face-to-face meetings. Gaming in Holland is the leading business community for everyone who is interested or professionally involved in the Dutch gambling market. We organize an annual conference coming up in 2 weeks, publish weekly newsletters going out in the next hour, and in addition to that, we issue print magazines every once in a while. I'm sure you've been reading a lot about the Netherlands, and after many years of delay, the regulated Dutch online gambling market will finally open next year. As a result, we have very, very much to discuss today. With us today, we have 3 speakers. I will ask each speaker in turn a series of relevant questions related to his area of expertise. This part of the webinar will be followed up by a Q&A. All you webinar attendees can ask questions through the Zoom chat function. So drop your questions in there. We may not be able to answer all of your questions, but please feel free to reach out to us after the event. We will provide you our contact details at the end of the webinar. But first, let me introduce today's speakers. We have with us today, as you see on the side of the screen and on the slide here in front of us, Justin Franssen, the Netherlands' leading gaming lawyer. We have Sam Depoortere, Director of TOTO Sportsbook and Casino at the Nederlandse Loterij. And we have Peter-Paul de Goeij, Managing Director of Online Trade Association, Nederlandse Online Gambling Associatie, previously known as Speel Verantwoord. But let's first kick off with our first speaker, Justin Franssen. Justin, a very warm welcome to the webinar here. Hope all's well and the family is well?
Yes, thank you, Willem.
That's fantastic. The key question today is, Justin, the Remote Gaming Act. We've seen some news coming out in the international publications the last few days. Where are we today?
Well, I would like to discuss 4 elements there, Willem. So where are we today and what is in the pipeline? But let's maybe start with the first part. So first and foremost, the secondary regulation has been sent to the European Commission for their review. We've had, of course, a decree which was sent in early July with a standstill period which ends on the 9th of October. And we've had the ministerial regulation been sent to the European Commission on the 12th of August with a standstill ending mid-November. I have to say the full ministerial regulation wasn't sent to the European Commission only the relevant parts. Yeah, and it remains to be seen whether or not the European Commission or member states are going to have any material comments on the secondary regulation. So that's the first part, notification of to the European Commission. Secondly, the Council of State is also looking at the secondary regulation, the decree. I think it was sent on the 13th of July. And in principle, what they are doing is they have a sort of a control function. So they basically say, they give an opinion on the quality of the legislation. And well, unless they have very, very material thoughts about the secondary regulation, I don't think it will hamper the further progress of the regulation. Thirdly, the decree, as well as the ministerial regulation, was sent out for public consultation, and we've now seen quite recently for the decree, I think it was the 8th of July, the second version of the decree was released, and there's only some very, very minor points in the second version of the decree changed, and we also saw the ministerial regulation, which came out on the 20th of August, post the public consultation, and that actually contains quite a number of changes, you could say, and I can point out a number, and not all of it, of course. And fourthly, the Minister of Justice answered to motions which were filed in Parliament, notably the most important one, the motion van Nispen, and the motion van Nispen dealt with the wish of Parliament to put in a moment of contemplation on the date of entry into force of the legislation. And he has now confirmed on the 4th of September, he's now confirmed that indeed the anticipated entry into force is going to be the 1st of March next year. Which means that in principle, the first licenses can go live 6 months later in September. And in his letter, he basically says, well, we've had a lot of pressure of parts of the incumbents to delay the process. Reason given by some of those incumbents was that they had to recover from COVID, that a lot of managerial time went to that event, of course. But the minister takes the view that on balance, player protection interest and public interest should prevail. So he's pushing for an entry into force of the 1st of March of next year. Whether that would actually happen, in my view, still remains to be seen. I wouldn't be entirely surprised that at some point new motions will follow from lower house. But it's crystal clear that the ministry and the gambling authority are now pushing for the 1st of March. Also, what was interesting to see, Willem, in that letter was the formal position or reiteration of a position that the cooling off term is now extended to 32 months, so 2 years and 8 months. That's how it's been put in the letter. Yeah. So basically, this means that from the moment you can apply as an operator and you have been on the market, you have to count back 32 months to see whether or not you're eligible to apply for a license. I think those are the most important key takeaways. Yeah.
Fantastic. That's all quite clear. So let's see how the details of this all develop in the next few weeks. Then let's look at the future. And I think we've been very fortunate this week to receive additional information from the Gaming Authority. What regulatory developments can we expect in the coming months, Justin?
Yeah, indeed. Right after the letter I just described from the minister, we saw, and this was announced already some time ago, we saw the Gambling Authority coming out with a so-called activity calendar, which they set out on a month-by-month basis how they perceive the whole process is going to progress. And I'm not going to go into the full details, but let's give a flavor maybe of what is to expect from September until, let's say, March next year. So in September, and we're hoping that they were going to come out with the draft application forms in September. That's not what they're going to do. They're going to release which documents should be submitted in the license application process, including an indication of what the requirements are going to be. So it's not the draft application form per se, but it's sort of a shopping list, you could say, of what they require you to deliver. So that's scheduled for September. And then in October, they intend to start with the testing of CRUX, the Central Exclusion Database. And also they would like to publicize information, general information about the control database.
Yeah.
Towards November, there will be the consultation surrounding the policy rule.
Yeah.
That policy rule will be quite crucial because one of the key elements there is going to be, of course, the reliability test, and how we now have a draft policy rule on the cooling off criterion. There we'll see an amended version or a final version, whatever you want to call it, which will be put out for a consultation. We will also then see publication of the game system inspection criteria. Then we're turning to January, and that's where the Gambling Authority intends to publish the final policy rule.
Yeah.
Which is quite late in the day, if you ask me.
Yeah, I was going to.
And also the model license application, which is, if you look at it, it's 2 months before, in theory, you can apply for a license under the proviso, of course, that you have been squeaky clean and not been on the market and so forth. But still, it's a very, very tight schedule, and I feel a bit sorry for those who have to apply on the 1st of March, because it's going to be a handful.
Well, I guess there's some people who can help them. So.
Oh yes, Willem, I forgot something. In February, we'll also see information on the so-called Addiction Prevention Fund. And then, of course, in March, that's the intended entry into force of the Act, and that's when hopefully the process starts of submitting the first applications.
Yeah, that's quite clear, and that is really helpful. And it's also the first time that the Gambling Commission laid out the time path so clear. So
yes, that's right.
And I guess that was really helpful summarizing that, Justin. So we'll move to the next speaker. Hang on and stay here for the Q&A for later. But Justin, thank you for your very extensive contribution. Sam, welcome from the Netherlands here. How's life? How have you been?
Thanks. Well, I'm currently in quarantine, as I have to quarantine myself for 10 days, as I've been on holiday in an orange area. So okay. I'm at home.
Go to orange. Go to orange. Look, Sam, your company's been in headline news the last few months. What can you tell us about the sponsor agreements that TOTO recently concluded with 10 football teams?
Yeah. So since in the end of July, we announced that we will be sponsoring 10 of the 18 Eredivisie clubs, all individually. Mainly that has been done because we feel that our bond from TOTO and the Dutch football is essential for us. We were founded by the KNVB, so the Dutch FA. Most people don't know that. I didn't know that either, but it was in 1957. We were founded by it, so our link with Dutch football has always been very strong. We have been the first name partner of the second division in the 90s. After that, we were partner already for a long time by the Dutch national team. The last 3 years, we have been sponsor of the cup, of the Dutch FA Cup, the TOTO KNVB Beker. And now we saw ourselves as a sponsor That's the next step, sponsoring individual clubs. So
Yeah.
we are sponsoring Feyenoord, PSV, Utrecht, Willem II, RKC, Heerenveen, Twente, Groningen, ADO Den Haag, and Sparta. Next to that, we also sponsor 4 of them. Have a women football team that play in the first division. So we see that market as an important growth. Women football, it's upcoming. We saw it for us important to be there for everyone, just not for the men, also for the women. We want to be inclusive for everybody. And for all of the partners, we are on the sleeve. And for those partners, both in women teams and men teams. And we see these partnerships as a next chapter in our marketing strategy. And of course, also as a key element of the opening of the market that has played a role in this decision.
Well, correctly. So I guess it's fair to say the gaming is on in the Netherlands.
That's correct.
Second question to you, Sam. With the entry into force of the Dutch Remote Gaming Act is imminent, as Justin just alluded. How is TOTO preparing to thrive in a competitive market?
Well, the Dutch lottery has been preparing for the arrival of COA for some time, as most of our competitors. We've been arguing this for years, that it's the best interest of the Dutch player that the market opens. We want to be responsible. We have prepared quite a lot. As you know, we are a merger of 2 companies, the Lotto and Staatsloterij 3 years ago. We have transformed the company to a full agile way of working, not only in development, but throughout the company. So also sales, marketing, product. So that has been a big impact for us. And on paper, we have a monopoly. But we all know everyone is active in the Dutch market. So at the moment, we cannot offer live betting and casino due to regulatory reasons. We are preparing this for the team and all our suppliers to be ready for the day the market opens. And that's important for us. That's quite a lot of work, as you might imagine. And next to that, we are also preparing a split between the online channel and the retail channel. As that is necessary, because on the retail channel we keep our monopoly, and there has to be a split between the COA markets and the WOC license. So we have a full split between them, and we have done that quite a lot of work for that already. We work with 2 different apps and websites, and even 2 different providers at the moment.
Okay, well, quite interesting. Well, thank you. So it seems you're well prepared for that. Which anyway, and we're just saying, with such a strong incumbent position at Solid Brand, what market position do you think will you occupy, let's say, in the next 5 years? Crystal ball.
Yeah, well, I can be quite frank with that one, quite ambitious. I think we see ourselves as number 1 in the Netherlands. That's our goal. I think we are pretty well on path for that. We are seen as the most trustworthy brand and local Dutch brand, and we see ourselves to grow in a natural place as the biggest one. We have seen that there's examples in Sweden and in Denmark. That's where we're looking at to go the same way. Of course, with much attention to responsible gaming, and we have changed the business when most of the team started to go. We started 3 years ago with changing the sportsbook. We added a lot of markets and our offering. We changed our brand strategy, and we have been quite successful in that. And all of that is preparing for opening of the market and our target of being number 1.
Exactly. Well, following Justin's timelines, that should be sooner or later. Sam, thank you very much. Please hang on till the Q&A, but I think that was really insightful what you just told us today. The third speaker here today is Peter-Paul. Peter-Paul, welcome. How's life in Amsterdam?
Yeah, life is pretty good. Nice and busy, especially after last week's letter. And all's good.
Good. Before we go into that, Peter-Paul, could you very briefly tell us something about NOGA? What does the organization do, and whose interests does it represent?
Yes, thank you, Willem. NOGA stands for Netherlands Online Gambling Association. It's the trade association for online gambling companies that want to become active in the Dutch market as soon as that is possible. And we are based on the foundations that were laid by the previous trade association called Stichting Speelverantwoord. Today we are a real association with a complete new set of goals and objectives that we can be held accountable for. Yeah, we're basically taking our responsibility and will work for Dutch consumers to get to a safe, attractive, and a fun online gambling market in the Netherlands.
Thank you. Thank you. That's quite clear and useful, Peter-Paul. So let's move to the first question. Justin already looked at a part of that, but I'm curious to hear your opinion. The Ministry of Justice published a letter last Friday outlining new details on the implementation of the Remote Gaming Act. What can you tell us about this letter from your point of view, especially regarding the new timeline and cooling off period?
Well, first of all, I was pleasantly surprised to see the contents of the letter. I've been reading it very carefully. I must say that the letter is very clear. It's a very firm letter. The minister takes the position that Dutch consumers can no longer wait on the protection that they should get from the Dutch law and the strict oversight of the Dutch gambling regulator. And also, what I understand from the letter is that the minister's reasoning that there's no good reason, there's also not a good economic reason to further delay the enactment of the law and also the implementation. And I would even think that this is a perfect opportunity for all the current operators to get on the online market as soon as possible, so that they can recover any loss that they have, loss of revenue because of COVID-19. So they might be able to recover parts of these losses. And also, if I were a land-based operator, I wouldn't want to stand the risk of having to close down again because there is a flare-up of COVID-19. Who knows? Casinos might be closed again at the start of next year. So, and then you want to have an online offer available, I would think. Yeah. So I must say, this letter is really good. And what's also good to see is that the minister considers that the cooling off period is now finally shifted with another 2 months. But after that, the minister considers it cannot be shifted again.
What does that mean in practice, Peter-Paul?
So basically, the cooling off period, which is basically punishing operators that have been fined and that have had an active offer on Dutch consumers, so targeting Dutch consumers. They have to wait before they can apply for a license. So Justin already referred to that. It's the 32 months prior to the application date. The minister considered in the letter that on request of Van Nispen, the MP who asked this, that for a last time he would shift the cooling off period with 2 months, but he also considers in the letter that this will be the last time because the minister considers this to be very legally vulnerable already, and with every shift of the cooling off period it becomes more vulnerable. Okay. So that's good news, I think.
Okay, great.
And really, maybe to add to that, it's pretty interesting. So just imagine that another delay emerges. What does this mean in practice? I think this in theory could mean two things. One, that the gap between the first batch of licensees amongst them probably NLO. And the second batch, if you will be shortened, assuming that the 32 months is now a given. Second potential repercussion, you could say, is that some operators who've started their cooling off too late, in a way, they now have another window of opportunity, or they may have another window of opportunity if that delay emerges. So it's, I would say, for those who are still pushing for further delayed implementation, it's certainly not good news if that were to happen, I guess.
Yeah. It's quite clear. Thank you, Justin, for pointing out to the practical consequences of this. I think that's really interesting for an audience being here today. I think we are at almost 80 people here, so welcome everybody who joined in the last few minutes. Moving on to the second question, Peter-Paul, how will the measure outlined in the ministry's letter impact the position of your association's members?
So we already touched upon it. Answering the previous question, but this at least gives the final clarity, if you will, to the prospective and new entrants to the Dutch market. All operators that want to enter the Dutch market now have a clear picture of when they can apply for a license, It's also good that this cooling off period is not extended in extenso, if you will. I would say that clarity and security are basically the outcomes for my members.
Okay, so that's the impact for your members. Great. Moving on to your last question, what is your advice? I mean, you've been in the industry in different roles for a while. What is your advice to operators considering to enter the regulated Dutch online gambling market?
Yeah, so with the risk of being repetitive, well, first of all, you should apply for a membership with NOGA, because if you don't, then you definitely have a disadvantage in terms of getting the information firsthand. It's really hard to get to the table of the regulator, to get to the table with the ministry, with other stakeholders. So I really would urge new entrants to not wait until you apply for a license to also apply for membership with NOGA, but do it now, so you are ready when you are doing your application. So there are all sorts of benefits with it that will help you during your application. And then the second point I would make is that you will have to prepare. You know, the more you prepare for your application, the more you make sure that you have your team ready, your assigned team ready, with the necessary, let's say, outside counsel, like lawyers, like consultants and licensing specialists from the Netherlands that can help you in your application process, the better. And as a third advice, I would say, try and run like a kind of a dry run application, and use the Article 3 charity lottery license application form that you can already download from the website of the KSA. That will give you a great level of detail and insight, what you need to have ready, what you need to provide the gambling regulator with, and that will be a good standard to work from, and it will give you some more in-depth knowledge of what the application form will entail, and this is probably not until November 1st that we will see the details of the application form. So use what is already there.
Great, really useful, Peter-Paul. Preparation and using the existing documentation to do a dry run. So we are at 80 visitors. We are half hour into the webinar. We've now concluded the questions, prepared questions to the speaker. And we're moving into the second part, the more exciting part, Q&A. let's move on to these questions. As I mentioned before, you as listeners or viewers at home can submit your questions through the Zoom's chat function. There's a chat button somewhere in your control panel. Let's take a look at some of the questions that come in. Keep the questions coming. If you have a question for a specific person, please do indicate that. So I've seen some good 15, 20 questions coming in. And oops, now I closed the, give me a second, the window again. And just to maybe start with Peter-Paul, there were two questions to you, very concrete, and keep these concrete questions coming, everybody. So how does one apply for a membership of NOGA? And that was from Fast, and then Marka is asking, NOGA, is it just for operators or anyone in the industry? So Peter-Paul, how?
Those are two very good questions. I'll start with the second question. So NOGA is for any operator and any B2B provider to apply for membership. And how do you apply? It's very simple. Send an email to my email address, which is peter-paul.degoeij@no-ga.nl.
We show that later.
We'll show it later, and I'll guide you right through it. The application process is pretty simple, except for a part which we call the due diligence. We will look at the background of the applicant to ensure that NOGA stays of high integrity and high standard. But it's relatively simple, and the board of NOGA decides on the membership.
Great, that's really useful. So I'm now looking through some of the regulatory compliance questions here. I think there were some that were repeated. The KSA has placed a high emphasis, and I guess that's for you, Justin and Peter-Paul, on operator behavior. How is this being policed? How is this going to be policed?
I can tell a little bit out of experience, because I have been applying for licenses and receiving licenses in the Netherlands before. The background of the applicant, if you will, is very important. They will basically do a due diligence on the applicant and all the key figures in the organization, including the shareholders and the decision makers. You will have to provide them with police records that are not older than 3 months. They are basically asking for a rap sheet of any criminal offense, any tax offense, any administrative law offense in the country where you're based. So it's pretty, I have to say, pretty hefty. I made a joke once that it's harder to apply for in this case, a lottery license than it is to get a banking license in the Netherlands. But they are, really digging into the backgrounds of the applicants and all the officers that are working for the applicants.
Well, that may explain why there's less lotteries than banks in Holland. I don't know. Question from Andrew here. What measures are being introduced regarding age verification and KYC? I hear they are particularly strict for the Dutch market. Justin? So
sorry, I had to unmute myself for a second. Yeah, I mean, the age verification, obviously, it's a logical one that it's been put into the legislation, but as I'm hoping many of you are aware, there is already some sort of a requirement to have age verification in place if you are currently passively available on the Dutch market, i.e. complying with the prioritization / cooling off criterion. And this criterion was added late last year, implemented on the 1st of January. So you already are at this very moment, despite the fact that you're not licensed, you're supposed to have a verifiable age verification system in place, failing of which you may, you may be confronted with that during the license application process. So it's not only once the law is enacted and in place and operational, it's already a requirement today, you could say.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think to add to this, if you don't mind, it's really good that you mentioned this, Justin, because you have to know that when you are applying for a license, you will be asked to sign 2 statements in your application. The first statement is, I have not been infringing on one or more of the prioritization criteria in the 32 months consecutive before this application. And the second one is, since January 1st, 2020, we have been applying age verification at registration with all Dutch players. So before they could play, they had to verify their age, and this has to be verifiable. So you have to be able to show proof of this. If you sign these statements and it is not the case, you have not been doing this, and you cannot verify this, then this is a false statement, which is a criminal offense, which will lead to being excluded for a license in the Netherlands for the next 10 to 15 years. So this is something really, really important.
Yes, yes, and don't try to outsmart the gambling authority, because their investigation methods are, let's say, quite advanced. You can count on it that they have a very decent picture of the market participants. They've done their investigations, although those investigations don't necessarily all lead to an enforcement action. But it's naive to think that if you're an operator and you've been accepting players from the Netherlands, that the gambling authority isn't aware.
Great, Justin. Since we are at licensing topic anyway, Marga here is asking, what about the regulation for games providers? Does the legislation foresee any specific requirements there?
No, let's say that other than in other systems we see in other member states, the primary responsibility rests on the operator, and they are in principle responsible for the entire chain. So the games providers, the PSPs and whatnot. So we don't have a sort of B2B licensing system as we see in other member states, which is good news if you're a games provider, I guess.
Yeah, that's quite clear. One more about licensing, and I guess then we will close that topic unless... Is there clarity over the affiliates? That's from David. Need to be licensed in the regulated Dutch market. And a question next to that, will it be possible again to have legal affiliate sites in the Dutch language? So is there a need for license?
Yeah. Well, the answer is quite simple. There is no regulation on affiliates in terms of anything in the Remote Gaming Act, nor in the secondary regulation, but quite general. And yes, the answer is that, you know, once there is a licensed market, you could switch on your Dutch language affiliate website. Yes. A more general remark is if you also look around what's cooking in the rest of Europe, notably for instance, in Denmark and Spain and Italy, there is increased pressure on affiliates, and I think, let's say, the burden of compliance the operators are currently confronted with is slowly and gradually shifting to affiliates as well. So I think you know, the days of let's say making easy money as an affiliate business are not over yet, but I think it's becoming more tough. Because you typically see that regulators are eyeing not just the operators, but certainly also the second ring, the service providers, the affiliates, the media companies, and so forth. So yes, it will be possible, but I think the business environment over time will become more challenging.
Great.
I also think that on that one, that the advertising rules will be applicable to affiliates that are in the law.
Of course.
And they are quite strict, especially if you talk about 18 to 25-year-old targeting.
Yes,
Of course, and combine that also, Willem, maybe as a final remark there, that the gambling authority will have some more, let's say, enforcement capabilities and options to choose from the menu, and which they will certainly use. And there's no doubt in my mind that they will, they have proven to be quite strict over the last couple of years, and I think that path is going to be continued post licensing.
Yeah.
Great. One other question with regards to requirements. Is there any sign of, that's from Ayman, is there any sign of affordability being on the agenda? And would the requirements be close to the UK? So that's a player affordability, I'm assuming, that we hear from the UK Gambling Commission. Justin, Peter-Paul?
Peter-Paul, you want to say something about that, or you want me to?
Well, let's see if I get it right. You can tell me where I'm wrong. I think there are currently no explicit availability requirements in the law or in the regulations, and the policy we don't have yet. But I don't expect there to be explicit requirements there. But the duty of care requirement that every operator has to abide by certainly is covering affordability as well. So I would say that this is definitely something that you have to pay attention to.
I think you're right, Peter-Paul. We don't have I'm not sure whether it's in the legislation or in the LCCPs in the UK, but we don't have it in our law. But of course, upon registration, you have to fill in your self limits. So if that self limit is going to be $1 million, that seems to be perfectly acceptable. Let's say affordability checks and source of wealth checks. We're not that advanced yet, but it's an ever-evolving system, and I wouldn't be surprised in the due course we'll see something similar to emerge in the Dutch regulatory environment. But
yeah, even
the way it's done currently in the UK, we don't have it in legislation.
To add to that, there were questions asked in Parliament last week or the week before that on the basis of a news clipping in the Telegraph, the Dutch newspaper, about someone who spent a fortune in Holland Casino. And these questions have been answered, I think, by the minister yesterday. But it's definitely something which is on the agenda of at least members of parliament. So I expect there to be development in that field in the coming months.
So work in progress here. Question to Sam here from Machteld. Are the new advertising rules going to have an impact on your current advertising?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think some of the rules have been written on our previous advertisement. If I'm completely honest, I think yes and no. Of course, the new rule states that the time slot from TV advertising changes from 7 to 9 o'clock. So that has quite a big impact for the reach. Next to that, there is some new rules, more clear rules about targeting 18 to 25-year-olds, and that's quite difficult as it's not really stated completely clear that you cannot use a famous person that's between 18 and 25-year-old who has or somebody who has a following and that's really big between under 24 or under 18 years. So it's not stated very clearly what that following exactly is. I presume it is social media. And to answer your question, at the moment we are already applying those rules that are not in place yet, but will be in place from next year.
So no more rapper Donny in the future.
Yeah, indeed.
Not gonna do that anymore, right?
Yes, that's indeed what we are talking about. specifically written for him for that advertisement.
Rapper Donny is doing other things today. So we still have another good 5 minutes left. I guess there's space for 2 or 3 quick questions. Browsing through a bunch of questions. Please do keep them coming. I think they're super relevant. Maybe one, and we've spoken about it before, but there was a fair number of people who tuned in slightly later. Peter-Paul and Justin, if you could maybe summarize that. The earliest date licensed operators could go live is September 1st. Is that final or could that still be delayed? Just a quick answer summarizing what we said before. We have some people who entered the webinar.
Theoretically, it could of course be delayed. And I see 3 dangers. One is of course input from the European Commission, all member states in relation to the notification procedure. Same flies for the Council of State. Second, we know that there is, part of the incumbents, certainly not NLO, are pushing for further delays, and it's not to be excluded that they're trying to get, let's say, a support for delay at the level of Parliament. And thirdly, also, quite practical, and I think I pointed to that when I said, well, some key documents are only coming out in January, and you can apply for the license on the 1st of March, is more practically, although the Gambling Authority states it's ready, it's, I guess, all very much dependent on the workflow. How many applicants will they finally get in and at what time? So is it humanly possible to process all of the applications that are coming in? We simply don't know. And if you look at the letters of the minister, as well as the communication of the Gambling Authority on Monday with their activity plan, it's very clear from the language that they themselves already give some hint that some slight slippage is quite possible.
Yeah.
So,
with regards to that, and sorry, just because it was the question that just came in, but I think that comes in very handy here from David. Does the Dutch election in 2021 threaten any part of that timeline?
I'd like to, I agree, no, but I'd like to add something to what Justin just said. What is important to mention here is that the 6 months is the maximum first term, if you will, for dealing with an application that the KSA will have to abide by, but it's very much in the hands of the applicant. And I know this for a fact, whether or not you'll be able to do an application within 4 months or within 3 months. I would even say that companies such as NLO and Holland Casino should be well positioned to do an application within 3 or 4 months. For them, this should be, simple and relatively easy because they've done this before. And so if you make sure that the timelines that the KSA is waiting for your answers and for your documentation are as short as possible, so make sure that your turnaround time is as quickly as possible, then it should be well doable to do it within 3 months. And the second point that I'd like to make is that the letter that was sent by the minister is put on the agenda of the fixed committee for justice and security in Parliament on the 23rd of September. So 1 day, unfortunately, after the Gaming in Holland conference. We have to wait and see what happens during that debate. It will be a video debate in Parliament.
Yeah.
On that, I think in the next couple of weeks, Peter-Paul, we'll see quite a bit of developments, and hopefully the let's say the shopping list I was describing of the Gambling Authority will be released, but it certainly that's going to be certainly food for discussions at the Gaming in Holland conference on the 22nd, Willem?
22nd.
Yes. 22nd.
I do have a remark on the second one on the.
Please, Sam.
on the statement that some incumbents are trying to delay what Justin said. I think it's personally, I don't think it's very smart of them, as they won't benefit. I'll be honest, most of the incumbents or the people who didn't get a fine will benefit from some other companies not being on the market. And I do think that's that's an advantage some of us might have.
Yeah.
And should you.
I thank you for adding.
And not just that, Sam. I think, I mean, some of the companies are talking about, and I'm not going to mention any names here, but received substantial funds from the government. They also claim that, they are the prime operators to, protect Dutch consumers. They've been pushing for, fast opening of their land-based environments. Well, if they're really interested in protecting the consumer, then they should, like NLO, push for a quick market opening and not delay it. And make sure that they, get a new revenue stream so they can repay some of the monies they've received from the government. That's my take on it. It's a purely personal opinion, of course.
I completely agree with you and Sam on this.
Quick market opening. Let's wrap up with that. There was a few more questions in the control panel. Keep them coming. You can also just ask them directly to any of the speakers here, Justin, Sam, Peter-Paul, or even myself. So we are getting to the end of this seminar here. The last thing I'd like to do is to ask you to visit our conference webpage for more information or subscribe to our newsletters and print magazine. And last but not least, I would like to thank SBC, Kelly and Erin, and the whole team for having us. I hope you found this webinar useful, and hopefully we see each other next time in real life in Barcelona. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Sam. And thank you, Peter-Paul.
Thank you, Willem. And thank you, everybody, SBC. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you, Willem. That was really good.
Really nice outcome.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
And we finished on time, so.
We had quite a lot of people in as well.
Yeah, very good.
The questions are really good, so.
Good questions, very good questions.
Yeah. It's a really interesting topic.
Good. So you guys have a next session now at 3 o'clock, or we have the next one at 4?
We've not got one after this, but then we've got the Gaming in Germany one as well, so. That's 4 p.m. your time, I think.
Yeah, that's in an hour. I'm going to get something to eat.
Okay.
I'm really energized for 4 o'clock. Thank you, Justin. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome, guys.
Thanks, Willem.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you. Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks.
Take care, guys.
Bye, everybody.
See you later.
Bye.
Have a nice day.